I read One Piece, and in this review, I'm going to go through the most important theme in the book, explore the surprising utility I found, and then share one suggestion which makes the book about 1,000 times more enjoyable. This was one of the strangest books I read. Was not expecting it to be as strange as it was, especially for a book so popular. So this theme of the hidden in the scene is something Tolstoy explores in seemingly infinite ways throughout the book, as characters' obvious, superficial social life compared to their hidden, deep spiritual lives. There are historical events and their hidden causes, society and secret occult society. There is even this secret plot line going on, which the casual reader may miss. Well, I missed the first time I read it. And it only became obvious to me once I found out that War and Peace was initially intended to be the first in a trilogy on the Decemberists. So reading with that end in mind, there's really only one character where you can see this generational through line from the start of the book to those revolutionaries. That character is Pierre. So he goes from a poor bastard to a rich bastard when his father surprisingly leaves him a fortune. He marries a beautiful woman who he grows to despise. She turns him into a cuckold. He hates his life and he does not believe in God. He is then initiated into the fraternal brotherhood of Freemasonry. Yes, Freemasonry. I'm going to go into way more detail on Freemasonry in the book because it's an aspect that is often overlooked. I believe it's one of the most important parts of the story. He then has a mental breakdown, plans to assassinate Napoleon, is arrested, and in his chains and privatation, he finds all the joy that escaped him in his freedom and riches. He returns and begins to work on his own secret society, which is intended to be a silent opposition to the increasingly totalitarian government. And then from that part, you can see where the next book would have taken place if Tolstoy, that lazy bastard, ever got around to writing it. Weird reviewer digression, but I suspect a lot of it, and I had to stop for a couple of reasons, but one of them, the biggest one, is I found myself spending a lot of time watching documentaries on Illuminati, conspiracies, and my interest in those topics sort of dried up about the same time I stopped smoking pot. That being said, there are still a couple of phrases I can't hear without regressing back to that paranoid stoner, and top of that list is any variation of the phrase one world order, new world order. So I was very surprised to find that phrase in this book in the mouth of my favorite character, Pierre. He comes back from being initiated into the highest degrees of Freemasonry, and he is advocating for a sovereign world order. Yeah, this is what he says, word for word. The entire project of the order should be based on forming people who are firm, virtuous, and bound together by unity of conviction, a conviction that consists of persecuting vice and stupidity everywhere, and with all their might, and of patronizing talent and virtue, drawing worthy people up from the dust and uniting them to our brotherhood. Only then will our order have power to bind imperceptibly with the hands of those who condone disorder and rule them in such a way that they do not notice. In short, a universal, sovereign form of government should be established, which will be spread over the whole world. Kind of creepy stuff. Pierre talks about this and then sort of never mentions it again, is dissuaded from it pretty easily. I believe it is an important plot thread to understand why. You've got to understand Masonry as it is discussed in the book. And quick aside, Tolstoy had to have been a Freemason, right? I'll give my argument for why, but he just had to have been. Freemasonry in the book, it's not explicitly mentioned that much, only in book 2, really. It's sort of just is represented as the first step on the pyramid of Pierre's spiritual transformation. So there are 3 main goals of the order of Freemasonry. The first and main goal, and withal the foundation of our order, on which it is established, and which no human power can cast down, is the preservation and handing down unto posterity of a certain important mystery, which has come down to us from ancient times, and even from the first man, on which mystery perhaps the fate of the human race depends. Now this is where Tolstoy sort of sets up that relationship with the reader, where you go, wow, I wonder what that mystery is going to be, and he never tells you. So as a reader, you're left to come up with your own theories, work from context. I have a theory which is the first man. That's the mystery, because, you know, a mystery since the first man. It's either the first man or his creator, in my opinion. The second goal of the order I will talk about later, and third goal is the setting of rights of the whole of the human race, which, you know, pretty noble stuff. With Masonry in particular, in this book, a lot of the stuff is never really explicitly stated, and there are mysteries which you have to answer yourself, like, why did Pierre even get initiated into Freemasonry? Seems so random that Tolstoy leaves enough clues for the reader to be like, oh, it was obviously his father-in-law. Another example, Prince Andrei is never explicitly stated as being a Freemasonry, but there are more obvious clues here, where you see Pierre ask him, you see a complete change in his behavior, you see Pierre starts referring to him as my protege, and he starts a new career working on a Russian civil code, which is based off the Napoleonic code. This whole relationship of you've got to work out for yourself a lot of the missing pieces is why I believe that the One World Order speech has a lot to do with Napoleon in the book. I'm not talking about history here. I'm talking about in the book. Don't fact check me. It's a theory. At the end, Tolstoy meditates on the myth of Napoleon's military genius, like not a myth as in it is great, a myth as in it isn't real, it didn't exist. And he just goes through the facts of Napoleon's life, and it makes it seem absurd. And when you see all the times that armies just surrendered to him without a battle, and impregnable Malta, I've been to Malta, impregnable Malta surrenders without a battle. As a reader, I was like, strange coincidence that all those abstract goals that Freemasons in the book were advocating for was the exact same stuff that Napoleon was claiming to offer the conquered. So I believe Napoleon is that one world order plan. Napoleon in the book is a very interesting character. It almost seems like Tolstoy has a personal dislike for him. It makes more sense once you realize Napoleon sort of serves as a proxy for this egoic view of history, which modern historians take, and is what Tolstoy argues against. So I'll just quickly summarize Tolstoy's argument on history. First, he talks about causes, causation, how there's infinite causes that are hidden from human eyes, human reason, and we are left with correlations. So because of this, modern historians will arbitrarily divide things into beginnings and endings, and arbitrarily attach an event as a cause, but the events they attach as causes make no sense as a cause. And he demonstrates this in a pretty funny way. So he'll go, yeah, obviously guys who write books will say a book is a cause of this historical event. And this is where the simplicity of his writing style almost becomes like a Norm Macdonald joke. He'll go, so modern historians' view on the French Revolution is that men preached about peace and equality, which caused them to slaughter and drown each other. And yeah, it's obviously doesn't make any sense. Ancient historians got around this by arguing that divinity took direct participation in events, so that was the cause. And that makes sense, of course. But modern historians will take that divine participation and they'll arbitrarily go, nope, it is this heroic figure like Napoleon. It is his will. This guy, through sheer tyranny of will, punches his hand into the clock face of human history and turns the gears himself, which Tolstoy goes, yeah, if you're going to argue that, wouldn't it make more sense to focus on the wills of the people who took the most direct participation in a historical event if man's will is the level on history? And if you're going to focus on man's will, you've got to sort of acknowledge that man's will is pretty unlikely, that we all live in this deterministic prison where we're just governed by these universal laws. More interesting than the argument was the application of the argument, because he was able to present it in a way where all this philosophical stuff, which seems so abstract, actually became the most important question you could ask on these things. What I found so useful about this book is most of these classics, you feel like you're wasting your time a little bit reading them, but this was very instructive for life, and I'll explain why it relates to that second goal of Freemasonry, where they begin this process of self-purification so they're worthy of understanding the mystery, self-improvement. And of course, when Pierre first hears that, he forgets that goal. He goes straight to setting to rights the humankind because he already feels purified and just becoming a Freemason. All throughout the book, he has all these false summits of, yep, I'm who I need to be now, before he gets kicked in the teeth. It really just demonstrates that Tolstoy quote about how everyone thinks about changing the world, but nobody thinks about changing themselves. The best expression of that idea I've ever seen. And it really illustrates how difficult it is to change for the better, change your life, and that it's a continual thing, but it's an infinite game. Like, you're always going to have to be after it. And it really celebrates the process, not the end result. Another kind of strange thing that happened when I was reading the book, I'd sort of adopt this Tolstoy frame to the facts in my own life. The events just turned into some Russian masterpiece. I started seeing myself as just a character, and not even the main character. One suggestion for reading the book, read the footnotes. It made the book at least 1,000 times funnier. One example, you go to a footnote, we find out that Russians call pretty much everyone a German sausage maker who isn't Russian. They call him a Scottish guy, German, and then all throughout the book, whenever I saw someone called German, I just sort of laugh. And this is where I also got convinced that Tolstoy had to have been a Freemason. So there's this footnote about how a map he drew of a battlefield was more accurate than historical map, because he actually went to the battlefield and drew it. The idea, and this is what the footnotes say, where it feels like they're lying, they say he got all this masonry stuff just from some library. And I could kind of buy that for, you know, maybe the rituals, maybe the ethos, but he's got whole like comedic bits on some brothers drive like this, and some brothers drive like that. Has to have come from experience. This is the first book of Tolstoy's I ever read, and it's kind of like rediscovering marijuana. I'll explain how. He just makes everything that seems so trivial, social climbing, the having a grody at a guy because he steals your fiancé, he makes it all seem like nonsense. I mean, you're going to die screaming. Why waste your time with that? All that matters is pure Christian love, which is how I felt when I first started smoking pot before the panic attacks.